Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Mark Henry, and today we're going to be talking about software license auditing with Open Audit. Couple quick notes for everyone. At the end of the session, we will be sending you a thank you note with a link to the recording. We'll also be hosting the recording on the Automantic.com website in our blog area. So if you just look at the menu at the top of the screen, you'll see a link for the Learn section of the website. You can find it there, and you can also find it in the Automantic section on YouTube. If you have any questions, feel free to submit them using the GoToWebinar Q&A or chat window. Anytime through the session, we're open to answering any of your questions. My associate, Paul McClendon, will be keeping an eye on that with me and help raise and address any questions that you have. So feel free to raise them through the chat window or the questions panel, depending on whether you have the download or the executable version of GoToWebinar. And we'll try to answer them during the presentation itself. When the presentation's all done and you go to exit, you will be presented with a really short 3-question survey. Please take a moment and answer that. It'll ask you a couple questions about what you thought of the session itself, what you thought about me as a speaker, and then I'll also ask your opinion for future topics as well. So we can't get better at delivering these kinds of presentations if you don't provide us your feedback. So in today's session, it's going to be about 30 minutes long. We're going to cover 3 main topics. The first is how to leverage Open Audit's software auditing system to do license auditing and reporting. We're going to talk about how to create and manage new licenses in Open Audit. And then we're going to talk about how to create live detailed dashboards and scheduled reports to keep you abreast of license usage. So we're going to cover those 3 pieces in today's 30-minute session. So where does this fit in with the IT service management maturity model? So when it comes to software licensing, you're looking at a strong level 1 entry in the areas of inventory and alert and event management. Now, when it comes to alert and event management, that's really focusing on the concept of having scheduled reports that can come out on whatever schedule. Maybe if you audit your network once a week or once a month, upon the completion of that audit, you might want to create some kind of a report that comes out and gives you information about the status and health of your licensing, right? So that's where the alerting comes out. It's not really event management, it's more alerting. Into level 2, you'll also know that we look at measure application availability. While we're not necessarily looking at, for example, the availability of Microsoft Word, understanding if you are oversubscribed, if you have more licenses deployed than you actually have licenses purchased, that actually speaks towards application availability, because technically under your EULA in most cases, that oversubscription is not allowed. And then of course we're getting into level 3 and then level 4 as well. Today we'll be solidly talking about Open Audit Community, Open Audit Professional, and Open Audit Enterprise. So all 3 licensing levels. You'll notice that most of the heart of software licensing is contained within the Community Edition of Open Audit. However, there are multiple enhancements only available in Professional Enterprise that build out your software licensing and give you a bit more power and a lot more flexibility. So we'll be touching on those pieces as well today. Some references for you. So these references are all heading back to the Automantic Wiki. So the first link there is for the Open Audit homepage. The second one is for the licenses collection page, which goes into how the software licenses page works, all the different parts of that table structure within the database, and then also how to create new pieces as well. And then the last one, which is actually outside the scope of today's discussion, is talks about software license keys. Now, I do want to separate the concept today of doing an audit for deployed, installed software packages versus collecting license keys. So Open Audit has the ability to pull license keys from many different packages, store them in the database related to that software package and also to the devices that have those keys installed. However, many software packages obscure their license keys. The keys are not installed in a place like the Windows registry where they can be retrieved. Instead, they're stored in some cases online when it comes to things like Microsoft 365, or they might be encrypted and stored in files where they can't be pulled back out into plain text. And so we're not going to be talking about software license keys today, but instead installations of software on machines. So without further ado, let's get into software auditing with Open Audit. I like as a blogger, Simon Sinek, and his concept of asking why with everything. Everything begins with the concept of why. Why is it being done? And this is a core principle of any kind of critical thinking exercise, right? And when it comes down to software auditing in the workplace, there's really three kind of driving factors, right? And one of them is positive, is the carrot, and the other two are the stick. So right off the bat, it's understanding that in most end user license agreements, or EULAs, there's a contractual audit clause that says that the software provider, the company that made the software, for example, Adobe or Microsoft, has the right to audit your business's implementation of their software at their expense. So they're not going to make you pay for it, but they'll come in, they'll send their auditors in, they can audit your installation and make sure that if you've bought 50 copies of Microsoft Windows Server 2008 R2, that you don't have more than that number of implementations, that number of licenses deployed. Another key piece that really drives that and provides the teeth behind that audit clause is the concept that, at least in the US, liability for each willful infringement can be up to $150,000. So let me be clear on what that means. An individual willful infringement, let's say that you have 50 copies of Microsoft Windows Server 2008 R2 purchased, and it's discovered that you have 51 deployed. So you have one deployment too many. That one individual deployment is a willful infringement, and that costs $150,000. And so if you had 50 licenses, but you had 100 deployments, you would now have 50 infringements at potentially up to $150,000 each. And that's what's really driving worldwide, globally, this push for software license management. The third piece, which is what I kind of call the carrot, right? This is the thing that, beyond just dealing with risk and exposure, is what's potentially good for you, which is if you keep track of where your licenses are expended, it can help you identify licenses that can be repurposed. So workstations, laptops are forever aging out. They're being retired. They're being put on the shelf for parts, or maybe they're being wiped and then sold, or they're being donated out to the church or to Goodwill or whoever. And in those cases, what companies in many times want to do is claw back those licenses, because if those devices are no longer under their control, if that software has been uninstalled, then you can claw back those licenses and you can repurpose those somewhere else. So that's obviously a very positive reusing of the concept of software license management. So how is it done? Anytime Open Audit reaches out across your network and does an audit, or whether that's done by going into the Open Audit login screen and auditing your local machine, or if you're walking around and you're deploying scripts to devices and having them run on a cron job or a Windows Task Scheduler, part of that, what that audit script does, is it actually reaches out across the machine, and depending on the operating system, it may be looking in several different locations and pulls back a list of all the different software packages that have been installed. Now, again, depending on the operating system, the Open Audit script can look in multiple places. So, for example, the Windows Audit script will actually look at not just the installed programs and files list in the registry. It'll look at the uninstall list of, or rather uninstaller list of files as well. It will look at, if you're looking at a Linux machine, it'll look at everything that's installed under CPAN or Yum, or whatever kind of repo system you have that machine configured for, and it will pull a list of everything that has been installed underneath those underneath those pieces, or as part of the original image of the machine itself. So I'm going to switch over. Let's take a quick look at what that Discover Audit Scripts, List Audit Scripts screen looks like. So I'm just going to switch over to Open Audit. This is Open Audit Enterprise 2.2.3, which was just released yesterday. I'm going to go Discover Audit Scripts, List Audit Scripts. And for those of you who are following along, again, this video is going to be available historically for you. I also have a PDF of the PowerPoint available for you. You can download it in the Handouts panel in the GoToWebinar window, or if you're watching this video online on YouTube, come again to the audmantic.com site, look under the Learn section. We'll host the PDF along with the video there as well. So from here, you can see that you have each of the individual auditing scripts available to you. You can drill into any of these. So let's take a look, for example, under the Audit OSX. So I happen to be running on a Mac, and I can see all the setups for this that are here. I can see all of the different types of configuration options at the bottom of the screen. So I can actually edit these. And if I edit these, it will actually edit them in the text file itself. And so if I export this file, it'll give me a copy of that with these changes in it. And over on the right-hand side, I can also download a copy of this file immediately. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So I'm just going to take a look at what the Audit OSX script looks like. And we've got about 400 lines of code in this. This one just happens to be written in Bash. It's designed for use on the Mac OS X. Straightforward. You can see here we've pre-configured the return URL for the Audmantic demo website. I've asked it to submit files online. I've also asked it to create a physical copy of the XML file on the local drive wherever this script is located. That way I can take a look at what the output of this audit file looks like. Again, these audit files are used to audit not just the hardware of the machine that it's running on, but to gather a list of all the running services, gather a list of all the installed software on that device, and then encapsulate all that information and return it back to the auditing server. So if we take a look at what this audit script produces for us, it's actually an XML file. And this is actually the audit script of the little MacBook Pro that I'm actually running this presentation on. This is my Mac. And if I do a search through this, and let's say that I wanted to find any installations of Keynote. So you can see, again, in XML format, you have the software entry for Keynote, the version 8.01. It's installed by the Mac App Store. And we have the actual physical location. It's under application/keynote.app. So we have that little piece of information for me as well. Looking and seeing what that actually looks like. So I'm going to take a look at devices discovered today because I ran this audit on my MacBook today. And you can see we have two audits that have come back. You can see one is for my MacBook Pro and one is for Paul's MacBook. Thank you, Paul, for auditing your machine today. And I can view my MacBook Pro's details. And down in the left-hand side, I'm going to expand open the software menu, select software, and you can see I have 506 entries here. And I can search through this for various things. So for example, if I wanted to see that entry for Keynote that we just looked at a moment ago in XML, I can also do a search through for, let's say, Microsoft Office. And I have a few entries for Microsoft Office here. I have Office 365 Service. So I'm registered with Microsoft 365. So Microsoft 365 gives me access to installers. And I can also look for individual packages within Office. So for example, Excel, you can see that I actually have two different versions of Microsoft Excel installed. So I have an older version, 14.7.7, and I have a newer version, 16.15. So there are several ways to get an audit done on a machine. This is covered in detail on that Open Audit wiki. But again, it can be part of an active discovery. So you can point Open Audit at a subnet or at an AD controller. Open Audit will walk down every IP address, attempt to negotiate sets of credentials that you provide with the device at that IP address, and then audit it. So if it's a network type device, router, switch, hub, firewall, Open Audit will use an SNMP community string, and we support version 1, 2C, and 3 for SNMP community strings. If it's a Linux type device, so ESXi, AIX, Sun, Solaris, Linux, OS X, etc., it'll negotiate using SSH, either an SSH user account or an SSH key, connect to that device, and then depending on the specific OS, deploy the correct auditing script to it, run it, and return the results. If it's a Windows machine, it'll use WMI and a Windows admin account to, again, connect to that machine and then drop off and execute a VB script, a Visual Basic script on that machine that'll gather information, return it. If you don't want to do active discovery, you can also simply, from the Open Audit login screen, rather than logging into the Open Audit server, there's a button for Audit this machine. And what it does is it gives you a link and allows you to download a copy of the appropriate audit script to your machine. You can then set the return URL within that audit script and then run the script, and it'll push the audit back. That's how Paul and I both did audits of our laptops today. You can also take those scripts and deploy them out using a software distribution system that you might have in place now, and then run them via a cron job or a Windows Task Scheduler. So maybe every time someone reboots their machine, every time they log on for the first time, or every morning at 7 a.m., run that audit and return the results. And one option we often have a question about is how do you handle things like air-gapped machines or air-gapped networks? You can either deploy an Open Audit server within that specific network, or as many people do, they actually just put the audit scripts on a thumb drive and walk around, plug them in, run the audit script, and then that'll return and create the XML file on the thumb drive, and you come back to the Open Audit server and then upload those individual XML files into Open Audit. So lots of different options. You don't have to pick just one. You can use multiple ways depending on how your network's set up. At the end of the day, it's all about auditing the machines, getting detailed information, and finding out what software is on there. Once you've audited your machines and you started getting back really good data, how can you report on that? How can you actually make use of that information and leverage it to help drive business decisions? So let's go back over to Open Audit again. So there's several different ways. So right off the bat, in Open Audit Professional and Enterprise, you have this great dashboarding system. This is very, very flexible. You'll see in the top center, we have a chart that lays out new software discovered per day. Now, it's important to understand that new software discovered per day, that this chart is not about things that I just audited for the first time. It's about differences from a previous audit to this audit. So if I audit a machine on Monday and I get a certain list of installed applications, on Tuesday someone installs, let's say, Microsoft Office, and then I audit the machine again on Wednesday. Open Audit will report new software discovered. It'll report the changes between that Monday morning audit and that Wednesday audit, and it'll talk about the software that was installed on Tuesday. Another option for you is to go Report, Software, Software, and now you'll notice in this list that there's lots of specific software examples here: Acrobat, Antivirus, Flash, Front Page, etc. All of these are available. All of these reports are available to you. You can also customize these reports and create new ones as well. So if you want to create a special report on a specific Office package, you can absolutely do that. We're going to cover that next week in another webinar series. So look for that coming up soon. For today, however, simply go to Report, Software, Software, and this will actually create a summary of every package of software. So it's actually looking horizontally across the entire database, across all different types of devices, and creating a list, an account of every single package that's installed. And so, for example, if I were to search for, let's say, Keynote, it'll come down and say, oh, I have 2 editions of Keynote installed, and I can click View, and it'll give me a list of 2 devices. Going back to that software report again. Again, I can use the search window in the top right-hand corner, and I might look for Office. And I can see here that I have Microsoft Office Professional. I also have Visual Studio 2010 tools. I have some different licensing components that are over here, and I have one edition of Office 365 Service. And that's my service pack on my machine. So many different ways to search through the information that you have available to you. So how do you actually keep track of licenses? What we've shown so far are the bits and pieces. It's the underlying kind of foundation or gravel that supports Open Audit's concept of license auditing. You first have to capture everything that's installed as individual little pieces, and then you can start rolling that up to more abstract information that really connects to the number of licenses you've purchased. So let's talk about where that goes to next. So within Open Audit, there's a piece called a collection, which is really a specialized table in Open Audit. In the license collection, we use that to manage and keep track of all the licenses that you tell Open Audit you've actually purchased, right? So Open Audit is keeping track of how many copies of Excel it's found, or how many copies of Microsoft Word, or how many copies of Microsoft Office, how many copies of Apache or MySQL, etc. So Open Audit's doing that side of the job. You need to be able to come in and say, oh, I have X copies of Microsoft Office. And you might say that the corporation, the business as a whole, has 10 copies. Or you might say that the software department has 3 copies of Microsoft Office, and the procurement group has 2 copies of Microsoft Office, and the sales team has 5 copies of Microsoft Office. So still 10, but you've broken it down by individual organizations within your parent company. And the concept of organizations and organizational structures is covered in depth, again, on the Open Audit Wiki. It's an important concept for you to understand. If you're going to leverage the power of license management in Open Audit, it really benefits you to start right from scratch with defining your organizations and then assigning the licenses to each of those different organizations. And how you define an organization, you can define them as work groups or departments or locations or other corporations within a holding company, etc. Totally up to you. So to access your licenses, you'll go to Manage Licenses, List Licenses. So let's see what that looks like. Manage Licenses, List Licenses. Now again, keep in mind that the licenses collection is all about creating an entry that tells Open Audit how many copies of something you're supposed to be able to have. And so, for example, if you look at the first row, you'll see that I've told Open Audit that I have a license for MySQL database server. It's assigned to the default organization. That's the parent organization at the top of the pyramid. I haven't described any kind of a description. And I've told it that we have purchased 3 copies. Now you'll notice on the right-hand side, displayed in red, Open Audit has said it has found 4 copies installed. Again, it's searching horizontally across the database, and it has found 4 copies of MySQL database server installed across the network. Now, if you look at the third entry down, you'll see I've told it that we're licensed for Microsoft Office Professional 2013. I've told it we've purchased 1 license and it's found 1. For the next one down, I've told it we have licenses for Microsoft Word. I've told it we've purchased 5 and it's found 2. Now this is all well and good. This is a fantastic way of getting at information. And if I drill in using the blue details button on the left, and if we take a look at MySQL database server, I can pull into this, and you can see here again, highlighted in red in the left-hand side, purchase count is 3, use count of 4, and then I have a full list of the devices where the software is installed and the software name and the software version. Going back to that list licenses again, we can do the same thing here. Let's take a look at Microsoft Office Professional 2013. So purchase count 1, use count 1. We have one computer, so this happens to be a little Windows book that one of our salesmen over in Brisbane use. And so this is Professional 2013 in English for US use. And software version is 15.0.5015.1000. You'll also notice up here in the top right-hand corner under match string, this is what Open Audit is using to look for a specific version of software. So in this case, it's looking for this piece of text within the list of software. And every time it finds a match, it then debits and says, okay, or it increments rather, the purchase count by 1. You'll notice the little percentage. That little guy is a placeholder that says, I'll accept anything after this. We'll talk about that more in just a minute. Let me go back to list licenses again. All right. Now that I'm here, this screen, I find this screen tremendously beneficial. As an engineer, this is where I would spend my time. I would come to this screen once a week, check this, organize it by all of the red blocks, basically anything where used exceeds purchased. If I have a lot of licenses, which obviously at a larger company you'll absolutely have several pages of licenses that you're keeping track of. In that case, simply export your licenses out to CSV. Let's take a look at what that looks like. And I have that open in Excel. So you'll see here that we have purchase count and use count. So it would be very easy to create a new column, do a quick calculation, and in any case where use count exceeds purchase count, highlight the line, create a colored code or colored block or something. You'll notice there are a couple of columns that are blank. Those are unused at this time. Audmatech is working on a massive kind of thought process workflow upgrade to the software asset system within Open Audit. We don't have a delivery date on that yet, but we've got some great ideas brewing. So keep an eye out, see where we're heading for upgrades. And if you're interested in Open Audit, I really recommend that you look at licensing it now, because if anything, the upgrades to the software asset licensing system in Open Audit might end up moving the purchase price some, if it does anything. All right, so let's talk about actually creating an entry on that screen. So simply done, click the create button in the top right. You can also do manage licenses, create license. That'll get you to the same page. If you have lots of licenses that you want to import, you can hit import licenses from CSV, and it'll simply give you a browse screen, and you can literally generate a CSV file and import it into Open Audit. So I'm going to hit create. And what I want to do is I want to be able to create an entry for Keynote. So I'm going to give it the name Apple Keynote. Installs of Apple Keynote. I'm going to assign this to the, again, the default organization. Now, I could create multiple levels of organizations, again, within my parent company. For example, we might have a North American office, a South LATAM office, an EMEA office, an Asia Pac office, etc. I'm just going to leave this at default. Now, I need to know a match string. How many? What does it need to look for in order to find something? The easiest way to do that, and I'm just going to open up a specific device. I'm going to find a device that has the software installed. Because this is a web application, I just use the right click. So I just right clicked on this menu selection. I told it to open a new tab. So now it's giving me a list of all devices. I'm going to search for my laptop. I know I have Keynote installed on it. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for the specific name of the software that I want to use. So here's the name Keynote. I can see that it has a leading capital, so I'm going to copy that. I don't want to copy the version because that's a different column. It's not included in the name. So the match string only looks through the name column. It's important. I have two copies. I have a copy on my laptop and I have a copy on Paul's laptop. I know that. So I'm going to say I have purchase account of 2. We're going to submit that. All right. And now it immediately brings me back to the list licenses screen, and it's telling me again that I have those 2. That's what I told the system. I purchased 2, and it's found 2 used across the network. It's really just that easy to create an entry, and as soon as you create it, Open Audit can immediately execute the query to count across the network and determine how many installs there are. And if you've made a mistake, if you need to update something, you can hit the details button. Now it'll give me that list who's here. Turns out, you know what? We didn't actually buy 2. We only bought 1. So I'm going to update that immediately. I'll go back to list licenses screen now. Oops, look at that. Now immediately, boy, we're out of agreement with our end user license agreement. It's found we have 2 installs across the network. I've told the system again that we only have 1. We need to resolve that issue. From a workflow standpoint, what I have now is the opportunity to drill into this, look at the machines that are here, and then determine which of these machines, are all of these machines still active? Are any of these machines been decommissioned, been destroyed, been given away, been wiped? Can I remove any of these? Can I change the install status on any of these machines and move them from production into, let's say, retired or deleted, and claw those licenses back into the system? Or do I need to buy another license? Do I need to go out? Is my license count, when I say that I purchased 1 license, is that correct? Can I validate that I did in fact only buy 1 license? Maybe one of these machines or both of these machines came with this license for free. So once I make up that decision, that's really the workflow for addressing the licensing issues, but it gives you something to drill into, right? It gives you that conversation point to have. Next for today, we're going to talk about how to create custom dashboards and also how to schedule some reports. So let's go back to the Open Audit Enterprise dashboard. Now, if you have Open Audit Professional, you're going to ship with 2 separate dashboards. You'll get this default dashboard, and you'll also get the purchasing dashboard. Again, if you've licensed at the Open Audit Professional level. If you have Open Audit Community, you do not have this dashboarding capability at all. So you have to look into Professional or preferably Enterprise. Now, if you have the Enterprise level license, then you can actually create your own dashboards. So for example, I created a dashboard specifically for software earlier today. It made use of a series of existing widgets. So we have the new software discovered per day. That's on the default dashboard. I have the software keys as well. So remember, keys and licenses are separate. They're considered separately by Open Audit. I have software additions by day. So you can see that we have some different pieces here. Down at the bottom left, I added in the servers widget. So it breaks down all the different types of servers that are out on my network. And in this example, on my demo server with just 40, I think 48, 49 devices, I've got Apache and I've got MySQL out there. And then I've added in the devices by OS group, which gives me kind of a gross breakdown: Apple, Apple iOS, Linux, Cisco, and then OS family. So for example, it breaks Linux out into CentOS, Red Hat, Ubuntu, etc. So it gives you a little more granular detail. And all of these are live. I can click on any of these data points, any of these pie chart pieces, return a list of devices that fall within that, and then drill into those devices. I can also create a custom dashboard by hitting the edit button, or I can go manage dashboards, list dashboards. So this gives me a list of all the existing dashboards. In Enterprise ships with 5 dashboards: the default dashboard, a purchasing dashboard, a network dashboard, a discovery dashboard, and a devices dashboard. This 6th one on this example, this is one I built earlier today. So if I look at the details, it gives me, again, just the name of the dashboard, a description possibility, the idea of whether the sidebar, the filtering menu system on the left, will be displayed or not, what organization has access to the dashboard, but more importantly, what organization's devices will be displayed in that dashboard. So I might create a dashboard that only represents devices in the Latin American office, and it would only show devices or software or installs or discoveries for that location. And then down the right hand side, it gives me a list of all the different widgets, which are the actual graphical components that make up a dashboard. Creating a new dashboard is very easy. You start with the list dashboard screen, click create in the top right corner. Again, provide it a name. Sample dashboard, whether you want the sidebar or not. And then you can pick and choose all of the different types of widgets that you want to have displayed. So you can pick and choose these pieces, and it gives you a little layout on the right hand side, although it doesn't give you an example yet. And let's say devices not seen. So we can save that. And then we can take that and we can view that dashboard. So it's very straightforward to take a look and see what pieces are going on. And I can even assign this as my default dashboard. And so this will be displayed whenever I log into Open Audit Enterprise. So extremely powerful and customizing feature. And if there's a widget, if there's a display that you want to have that isn't already provided, so one of those little widget pieces, just like queries, just like locations, we come predefined with lots of them, and then you can actually create your own. So there's a very large section of the wiki that goes in depth into the creation of custom or new widgets. It's a very detailed piece. It does take a little bit of understanding of how SQL works, querying the different tables in the database to join them together to create the graphical display that you want. But it can be very, very fulfilling. And of course, if you've licensed Open Audit at the enterprise level, you'll have support and maintenance with that license as well. And our professional services and support teams will be happy to help you creating custom widgets, building your custom dashboards, or creating custom queries. One last piece that I want to touch on is the concept of being able to generate reports on schedule. So one report that's often brought up when it comes to software is the report change software report. So you'll see that we actually have new software installed in several locations. Again, these are new installs since the original audit of the device. So any of these reports can be set together on a schedule. So I'm just going to go report, schedule reports, and I can actually create a new scheduled report I can give it a name, description. I can select what it is. So for example, I want to report. It'll ask me for new types of reports that I might want to generate. And so I could say software discovered today, software discovered yesterday, or I might want to take a look and say what I want is I want to query and I want to have the software change and generate that and then provide it with an email address. Of course, I would have to have configured email in Open Audit first. I'll give it a schedule and save it. And every time Open Audit hits that schedule point, it'll generate that query, that report, and it'll attach it to the email in whatever formats are available to it and email that out to the recipients. All right. So that completes today's webinar. I want to thank all of you very much for your time and attention today. We've appreciated you being here. Again, look forward to a quick survey at the end of this session, and a copy of this will be available to you either through GoToWebinar or also on the audmantic.com website.